Today we're talking about the thing you do after you do the thing, the project retrospective. So looking back over a completed project is something that we all do naturally to some extent, even if it's just getting home after a job and rambling to a loved one about how your day went. But I found it's really helpful to dedicate some time to sitting down and getting it all out on paper, just in the same way that journaling or to-do lists help to wrangle the vague thoughts and feelings floating through our heads into some kind of manageable order. Doing a formal project retrospective is really important to give the creative mind some perspective on its own processes. I have a weirdly selective memory. I can remember whole heaps of useless facts I read on Wikipedia a decade ago, but if you ask me how I was feeling just last week, I'll have basically no idea. So I'll just assume that how I was feeling then was probably the same as how I'm feeling now. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this isn't just a me problem. What this means from a creative perspective is that by the end of a project, I may well have forgotten about the problems I had to work through during it, and so I'll be doomed to repeat history and keep solving the same problems in the next project rather than preventing them from cropping up in the first place. So how do I and my sketchy memory go about gathering the information I need to do a proper retrospective? Going back to the finished product can stir up some memories of the process that went into making it, but those memories are going to be coloured by that same bias towards your current mindset. Instead, let's approach this like a historian and take some notes, looking at the primary sources first. Looking at your notes from the beginning of a project is a great start here. If you keep a daily journal like I do, that's going to be a big help too, information straight from past you. Once you've looked over all of that, now is a good time to have a rummage through the archaeological evidence, looking back over the project files, or the materials, or the tools that went into making the thing, whatever it was. This should help take you back to the actual process of making it. Lastly, primed with all of this knowledge, revisit the final product and see if anything more jumps out at you. So now you've got all this info, it's time to turn it alchemy-like into wisdom. Okay, so step 1, write down a quick recap of what actually happened in the project from beginning to end, in as much detail as you can be bothered to do. This may seem a bit redundant, but it may be useful in future when you find your process has changed to be able to come back and see how you used to do things, and maybe get a sense of the trajectory that you find yourself on. Maybe you forgot about this thing you always used to do before a project, and it might be time to bring that back. Or maybe you realise that there's something you've always done and it's never actually helped. Next, let's talk about what worked well. Did you make good use of your time-honoured go-to techniques? Write it down. Did you go in with the intention to try something new and absolutely smashed it? Awesome, write it down. Did you accidentally stumble into something that went really well? You get the idea. Talk about goals that you set and reached, and talk about the good stuff that you hadn't anticipated. This step serves the double purpose of recording data on what's actually useful, and also of forcing you to give yourself credit where it's due, which is something we can all afford to get better at. Next, what didn't work? Now, a few caveats before we get going on this step. Firstly, be gentle but honest with yourself. Mistakes and mishaps are a part of creativity, and beating yourself up helps precisely nobody, so you're going to have to treat your past self with the same love and fairness that you would your best friend. And secondly, this is not where we talk about fixing or explaining stuff yet, so problem statements only. Don't say something like, I was an idiot and didn't bring a screwdriver. That note should read, the light got broken and we didn't have the tools to fix it on site. So far, this has been pretty similar to the standard way that businesses tend to do project retrospectives, and it's been largely focused on actions rather than thoughts. So here's a little addition of my own. The author Amy Krauss Rosenthal wrote, "For anyone trying to discern what to do with their life, pay attention to what you pay attention to." Since this retrospective is all about looking back at ourselves in the process of doing something that was meaningful to us, and since in my experience it is at least somewhat true that how you do anything is how you do everything, let's take this opportunity to take note of what you found yourself devoting the most brain space to. It's quite likely that this was in no way proportional to what actually required the most action. I've spent far more time worrying about having arguments with people than I ever have actually arguing, but being aware of the stuff you get preoccupied with in the moment can be the first step in finding ways to put those thoughts to rest, so you can shift your attention to the things you'd rather be focusing on, or at least in finding ways to live with those thoughts rather than struggling against them. And now we've reached the final stage of the retrospective, taking note of what we've learned and what we're going to change based on that. To use John Driscoll's terminology for this cycle of learning, we've answered the question of what, now we say so what, and from there, what now? So we can go through the points we've made so far and identify the causes of the problems we've identified. If that cause is something within our control, we can come up with a strategy for how to prevent the problem. If not, we find ways to mitigate or solve that problem when it does arise. Ideally, we do both. We can prevent our gear running out of battery by charging fully before use, but we can also mitigate the consequences if it does run out by bringing a supply of spare charged batteries. As with any kind of goal setting, when we come up with these strategies, they need to be simple and measurable. For example, be careful not to drop camera lenses is not much help. How do you know when you're being careful enough? A much better option would be when you hand somebody a lens, wait for them to say, got it, before you let go. And if you don't know how to fix a specific problem, don't just write down find a way to fix this. Write down what the first step would be, which, more often than not, is asking somebody for help. Addressing that problem is your new project. Okay, I'm gonna add on one bonus step. You can call me a hippie if you like, but there's science to back me up as to the psychological benefits of this. Gratitude journal. Try writing down 10 things relating to this project that you're thankful for. That can be things in your situation, or things in yourself, or whatever. Just be honest about it. And if you're struggling to think of things, take a look back in your notes at what went well, and ask yourself why that was. Thanks for joining me for another chat. This stuff about creative process is quite near and dear to me, and it means a lot seeing people working through stuff like this. Let me know in the comments if you've got any handy frameworks for debriefing yourself after a project. I'm sure there are lots of other approaches out there, and I'd love to hear about them. I've got more videos about creativity and the creative mind. Check out my series Make Things for more of this, and please hit subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date on what I'm putting out. Good luck with whatever you're working on right now. I'll catch you next time.